song
to introduce our next show. What are we doing this week?
We're doing songs
from another show.
Welcome to Thingy Thing. What's this programme called?
It's called In the Court of the Wenton King.
This is a programme about album reviews
and bootleg reviews, which aren't necessarily albums, but they're quite similar, so we're going to do it to make it quite interesting.
So yes, Pink Floyd, once again, our second Pink Floyd video. Last week was the BBC session from 71. So predictably, this one's very predictable actually, we're going to do a 1972 bootleg, so you can probably guess which one it's going to be. Which one is it?
It's Brighton.
Brighton.
Here We Come, or whatever it is. There they go.
Is that what it's called?
I don't know.
Not a bootleg called, but it's 20th of January 1972, which is an important year, obviously, for the band. An important moment for the band. You read about this era, and particularly Roger Waters, but the rest of the band as well, talk about they're in danger of dying of boredom. And it's interesting that Roger Waters thought that they'd started taking it easy a bit, that they started slacking, which is strange because the obviously from our perception it was an upward trajectory, and they got it together in that last year. Obviously, you know, they're still very much playing space rock, where they play one note for an hour and then they change note and they play that note for an hour in E and A. You can understand them getting a bit bored, particularly Nick Mason. I mean, what does he do?
You do get the sense that sort of when they formed, it wasn't necessarily for the music. I get the sense they're a bunch of sort of slightly geeky.
Well, they're posh, aren't they?
Yeah, not
poshers.
They don't strike me as particularly that they were going to be winners in life. They were posh, but they weren't uber smart or anything like that.
That second phase of the band after Sid left, that's the band period, where it was a four-piece and it was a four-way thing. But the period they're coming to now, obviously, is the Roger Waters period.
Yeah.
Starting with a famous album,
which we've already reviewed, haven't we, Kev?
We've already reviewed that, so we don't need to do that. Yeah, so the evil Roger Waters took over and forced Rick Wright not to do anything. It's his fault. And he realised that life had already started, he wasn't preparing for life, and maybe that gave him that extra drive to become famous, because that was the aim, to be rich and famous and all that stuff. And they did.
Yeah, there's a great line on Dark Side of the Moon. I missed the starting gun. I love that line. I suppose that's what encapsulates what drove Roger Waters to make it Pink Floyd into gear. I'll be surprised if what's his face agrees with that.
Gilmour.
Yeah.
I bet he doesn't.
Yeah, I think it's. I think this is a bit of a grey area, the way that people get credited on albums, because Roger Waters could not have made Dark Side of the Moon without the supporting members.
Yeah.
From the music side of things, and I think David Gilmour has even said in the past he played the bass.
Yeah.
For Roger Waters to put it down on the actual album line. But without Roger Waters, there would definitely not have been that focus and that sort of concept of what the album should be, and you would have obviously got something very, very different at the other end of it, because it would have been, the word I've used before is non-teleological, like it would have been probably a bunch of jamming and see what comes out at the other end and pick the best bits. Whereas with Roger Waters it is very teleological, he's got a distinct idea of what he wants, they go out and they make it.
Yeah. Exactly, yeah. I mean, but you know, a jam in E and A is a jam in E and A. It's not something profound that's going to change the world. And some keyboard and guitar on G minor doesn't evoke this amazing feeling of absence. You know, sunshine of You Crazy Diamond. Shine On You Crazy Diamond does. That's the thing. But yeah, it's good. So yeah. So anyway, they've written this piece. It wasn't finished, but Brighton Dome, 20th of January, attempted to premiere this piece, and that's the recording we're going to review. It's our first venture into audience recordings. So this isn't a proper recording. This is someone in the audience with a microphone. I've experienced a lot of this. Being obsessive about individual bands, you end up hearing these audience recordings by Led Zeppelin and Black Sabbath and King Crimson, bands like that. So this is a very typical recording for me. It is on bootleg standards of audience recordings, this is a B, which means good. On any other standard of anything, it's wretched, because the information isn't actually there. It's only half the information. And what you do when you're used to listening to these things, that you put the rest in yourself. That's what happens. Is it listenable? Was it horrible?
It takes a little bit of effort to get through it. The point is, if you want to listen to Dark Side of the Moon, you listen to Dark Side of the Moon.
Yeah.
So ultimately, the only interesting thing is to listen to how it was in an earlier form.
Yeah, that's why we do this instead of one from '73.
So a bootleg's good in that point of view. It's not something I'd stick onto a CD and listen to in the car.
It's very difficult to listen to because obviously the sound. I mean, good sound. I mean, it's kind of defies the laws of physics, but a really good sound system helps a boot because you can hear every little thing, whereas in a car with car noise you have to turn it off.
Actually, I find the acoustics quite good in a car.
They are, yeah, but there's certain frequencies which are hard to hear.
You get a sense of tracks that you didn't think are particularly good album tracks but are awesome live.
Yeah,
and you get sort of like an insight into that's maybe you wouldn't say. I mean, the only place I would really know and stand careful with acts as a good live piece would be Live at Pompeii.
Yeah, which is this era.
Yeah. But Live at Pompeii isn't really a live.
It's not really live, no. It's live in the studio with extras.
Yeah.
And that's why it's brilliant, highly, absolutely fantastic. But obviously, although they'd written, I mean, Dark Side of the Moon was being performed at that point. They didn't do it. They left it out. So that's why this is interesting. Some of the tracks are officially available on the Immersion box sets, and I'm not convinced it's the same performance. Maybe they came back to Brighton Dome later in '72. I don't know, because it just says Brighton Dome '72. But I'm not convinced, particularly Travel Sequence. I don't think it's the same.
I tell you what is quite good about this is you do get to hear some of the audience reaction. A bit of a comment under the video says, "Oh, the guy at the beginning is quite impressed."
Yeah,
and it is good to hear that. It gives you the sense of, oh, it was that amazing then as well.
And what would it have been like to be there? Because of course they didn't film it. So should we do the songs?
Yeah, go on then.
Let's do the songs. First song, Speak to Me.
It's a good song.
It's a great song, yeah. It was only when I heard this I realised why it's credited to Nick Mason. Why did he think of the heartbeat? Of course, the heartbeat is played on the bass drum. Yeah. Wow, he's earned that money, hasn't he? Just think how much money he's made out of that, making the sound of a heartbeat on the bass drum. So yeah, it starts with that, and like you said, you hear the audience reaction, don't you?
You can only imagine what's going on stage because obviously I don't think they've got the big circle thing at that point. So, yeah. Obviously, there's something impressive going on there, and does it add anything to Speak to Me?
It's interesting. That's where it came from. So next song, Breathe in the Air. Early version where Gilmour's just playing the jangly guitar. There's no lead at all. So obviously on the album, famous steel slide. He didn't play that live because he didn't have those tabletop slides. He played some bluesy licks on it, but at this point he didn't do it. It just plays the jangly chords.
I'm pretty sure the melody is slightly different on this as well.
I think it's just what he's playing. So he's playing cling, do 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 do, that kind of stuff. But it's still just those two chords. He's just playing them in a slightly different, and it's Breathe in the Air. Sung very well.
From what you can tell.
From what can you tell?
Track 3.
The Travel Sequence. This is one of the reasons to listen to it, because this is what On the Run replaced, and it's a funky jam, a very typical of the time Pink Floyd funky jam. And you can see how the bits they've taken out are the ones that are kind of typical of Pink Floyd at the time. So they took that out because it's too standard. It's perfectly great, but it's not amazing, and they could have been on the previous album. It could have been all of that.
Yeah.
Although conversely, it was a thing of comparing bits of the vocal sections of Echoes with Breathe in the Air. They're very simple.
Yeah. I mean, I just kind of assumed this was more of a visual thing, but obviously you can't see the visuals, and it was just something to play along with some fancy dance stuff on the screen.
Which brings us on to Time. This is more interesting, I think, because this is an early version of the song we know, and it is different. Firstly, we don't get the clocks. The clocks were Alan Parsons' idea, so we don't get the clocks. And the intro is essentially the same, but it's much more understated. But also, really interesting is Nick Mason is much busier. He's doing a lot more. It's not very often you hear Nick Mason doing anything, really, so it's interesting. Doing little stuff. It's really when the song starts. Very different. I'm assuming this is played as Roger Waters presented it to the band. Probably Gilmour's idea to up the volume a bit, turn it into more of a rock, really make use of Gilmour's voice, because this doesn't. It's much more restrained, much more like the stuff on Medal, stuff on Scuba by Clouds. Solo still.
I mean, you can't say any more than that really. It's kicking around and all that.
It's probably my favourite, I think, Dark Side, and the guitar solo on the album. It's unsurpassed. So next song, Breathe Reprise, without vocals. There's no vocals on Breathe Reprise at this point. That's what I can say about that. Really.
Just breathing.
So then we have the Mortality Sequence, which is the early version of Great Gig in the Sky, because apparently Great Gig in the Sky, the famous vocal stuff was done during the mixing stage, so that they didn't really know what they were going to put in there. Here it's substantially different. Chord sequence is the same, that's it. Other than that, it's completely different. It's all done on organ. It's basically those organ chords to some voices. Again, this is available on the Immersion box set, but Rick Wright, I think as is often with keyboards, he made the decision to switch to piano. was the correct decision. I wish Keith Emerson had done the same.
Yeah, I think it's not only this sort of like later versions of
Great
Gig in the Sky, live versions, it kind of underlines how important that voice is to that song. Because even when you sort of see like Pulse live or something like that, you got Sam Brown and the other singers singing, right? It's not the same.
It has to be, yeah. It has to be exactly what's on the album, and when it's not, it's wrong.
And that is a kind of a mistake in a way. The fact that it's irreproducible.
And it was pretty much spontaneous.
Yeah.
That's the weird thing.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Next track.
Next track is Money.
Yeah. This is where it all goes wrong, isn't it?
Yeah. So somewhere in the Mortality Sequence,
Buzz.
you start getting a buzz, and it's not during it. It's not quite clear whether it's part of the noises because there's just a horrible noises back, and then it goes really. And that's actually the coins from Money, but they've got bzzz in the middle of it, and they soldier on a bit. They actually play a little bit of Money, very pedestrian version of it, obviously with no vocals, and then they just give up eventually. And I think what it was a power problem with the tape recordings coming and the light show all going from the same power source, and they were interfering with each other or something. So Roger Waters makes the infamous, fairly famous line about due to terror and horror or something, we're going to play something else. So that's the end of Dark Side of the Moon. We don't get to hear anything. So does that count as the premiere, or is the following night at Portsmouth Guildhall while they finished it? Is that the premiere? But this is probably more interesting because they would have thought about it a bit after performing it. Atom Heart.
That's it. Without
the orchestra, and it is striking. Apparently, it was striking to the rest of the band as well. How boring a piece! It sounds very. It's almost without the orchestra. It sounds generic Pink Floyd music, but it does sound by far less interesting, uninspired, and that's partly just because it isn't that good a piece.
Actually, I didn't mind it. I think what it is I've not listened to Atom Heart Mother that much, so it's still fairly. I mean, this is a fairly new version. Got the orchestra, and that is quite long, but it does evoke later Pink Floyd or this era of Pink Floyd.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah.
In places, which is
something very generic about it.
Yeah.
Which is strange, but it shows how they've got a specific jamming style, a very basic jamming style, which is how they construct all their songs, and that's still there on the final cut. You know, it never really went away, but the sound of the albums had changed tremendously. Yes, next song.
They have a break here.
Yeah, they have a break.
And they come back with Careful with That Axe.
Careful with Think. And there's another comment from Roger Waters about we're going to release all the
adrenaline running through our veins.
Yeah, they're going to release. In other words, they're bored and then they just want to let it out. Annoyed that the piece hasn't worked. And it is a really good Careful with That Axe. I haven't heard a not really good Careful with That Axe from '72 also. So yeah, but yeah, I think it's slightly fast. It's not as fast as the album version, but it's slightly fast, and it's a very intense version. There isn't much of the quiet bits, so that I think what he says is kind of true. So that makes it slightly different to the Pompeii version.
I'd always assume that on Pompeii his vocals have been augmented in some way.
Yeah, how does he do it? That weird noise.
Yeah,
it's like death metal singers, but why? What possessed him to make that noise?
It's good though.
It's or something. I don't know. So yeah, Careful with the Axe at this point is just fantastic. It was only by chance. There's a proper recording of it.
Dun. One of these days.
I think that one of these. This suffers from the sound more than the others. I think because it's bass and it's not been picked up properly. And listening to it in the car with driving fast, I actually couldn't hear the rhythm. I realised I was putting the rhythm in because all you could hear was da 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 da. You couldn't hear dun 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 dun. So it just sounded really naff. It's a shame because this is actually an extended. Well, it's kind of a shame. This is an extended version, and there's a bit of bass messing around in the middle. Whether the bass messing around in the middle is any good, I don't know. But I've always been a fan of the extended live version with extra bits.
Yeah, I definitely get the sense there's a bit of anti one of these days sentiment among some Pink Floyd fans.
Really?
Yeah, I think it's because it's so simple. I don't know. Or because it's credited, Nick Mason's it's his vocal debut, isn't it, or something like that?
Oh yeah.
It's always sort of mentioned.
It's silly.
Yeah,
it's interesting.
I really like it. It's very, very simple.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. The controversial. The best version is on Pulse. Alright, best sound. You don't need Waters playing the bass, do you? And that's all he does on it. So it's got the best guitar playing. It's got the best sound. So that's the best version.
Next track.
Echoes again. We've already reviewed Echoes,
yeah,
really.
Brilliant track.
Here it is. Still brilliant. It's interesting if you hear the progression of the performances of it. It's really Gilmour that changed. He just did less and less and less. And you hear the '74 versions. He plays virtually nothing. I mean, you've got a sax solo instead of the first guitar solo bit, and the very end, the last performances of it, that very end bit, he's just holding the guitar like it's just the sound of no guitar. It is fantastic, but they're all different like that. So that's really cool.
The most interesting thing about it is the fact that it's the penultimate track. that they play. I would have expected to be last. Didn't they open with Echoes, some sets, instead of Shine On?
Oh, in the 80s, yeah.
Yeah.
That's not Pink Floyd, though.
Yeah, I would have expected that to be to finish the show, maybe, but it didn't.
No.
No.
Then again, maybe that's the end of the set. Maybe the next song was the encore.
Possibly, yeah.
Which is Saucerful of Secrets.
Saucerful of Secrets.
Yeah, Saucerful of Secrets. I've got reservations about this song. I've always had reservations about this song. I think that the noisy messing around, actually in the context of a concert, that's brilliant because it's a big cacophony at the end of the concert. But
this is one of the tracks I thought that it's useful to listen to on a bootleg because you do get a great sense of appreciation for it as something that's live.
It's performed, yeah.
And
obviously it's all about Roger Waters bashing the gong and all that stuff, which we can't see.
I actually quite like that, and the fact that it's over 10 minutes long, isn't it? And it's sat after Echoes.
Yeah.
And it doesn't sound. Well, I didn't find myself thinking,
back to the crowd crap. No, it doesn't feel like that at all. You're right. It works really well. And obviously, although the noisy bit I'm dubious about, the Celestial Voices bit is wonderful. And by this point, from the Ummagumma era onwards, of course, you had the vocals on it as well, and the vocals never come in. I don't know if maybe his mic didn't work, or maybe that they didn't turn him up.
Yeah.
Or maybe he just didn't do it. But maybe he was tired.
The vocals on Live at Pompeii, again, it didn't seem real to me. It sounded kind of not quite a natural register for him.
Yeah, I mean the version on the Man and the Journey is dodgy, and he doesn't sound all that good on the Ummagumma live performance. On Live at Pompeii, it sounds fantastic. So yeah, possible studio trickery. Don't know. Pink Floyd in 1972 audience bootleg. Interesting, I hope.
Yeah.
But let us know. Let us know if it's interesting. Is this good?
Yeah.
Should we do bootlegs? Is it a waste of time? Join us next week for a bootleg that also features Careful with That Axe Eugene. I've probably given away what it is there.
So give us some likes, subscribe, and we'll